Well, good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here again with you on this Thursday breakfast with Jesus. I'm trying to see if I get this thing going. Yeah, here we go. Sometimes the old iPad a little slow on the uptake, but we're looking good here with Norma and Jane and Ann. Callie, good to see you guys. Appreciate having you along with me as we get underway this morning. And we are taking our time to really unpack so much that's been left here for us in Jesus' story of the prodigal son. Um, the depth of revelation that the Lord is able to pack into one short little story is just amazing. But that's Him. I don't know if you've experienced this um, what I would call the peeling of the onion, right? Where you read or study a passage and get blessed by it, and then come back to it. Who knows how much later? Could be days, weeks, months, years later, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I didn't see that. You think you know what what a particular verse or passage is all about, but nah, there's layers upon layers, and that's so cool. Um, so let's say good morning to Jackie and Norma, and I think I got the rest of you all, Jane and Callie. Thanks so much. So yeah, we're going to continue here in Luke 15. Um, we've been, looking at this young man and what's been happening here with him asking his father for his inheritance in advance, right? Wow. If you missed any of the past episodes, you really need to go back and watch so you can kind of get caught up here. But so it says here in verse 13, right? It says, and not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his estate with loose living. Wow. This the focus of this story, right, is really about you and I who have come into this relationship with God, but for whatever reason, we have not yet fully understood or received all the revelation that there is concerning Him, how good the Father is, what He wants for our lives. So we're still, even though we're born again, we're still operating under, the old ways of thinking, right? That old nature that was in fact crucified with Christ. So it no longer has any authority in our lives. But we still have the memories and the ways of thinking and the ways of feeling and experiencing life that come, that arose and were kind of built into us from that old nature. And so you know, that's what we're seeing being played out here, because this young man had been a part of his father's household and lived there and had a relationship with his father and kind of just walked away. So that's really the focus. We don't want to put all of this on folks that aren't saved yet, because they don't know any better. We didn't know any better when we weren't born again. Um, so he gathers everything together. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, that he wasn't probably in this context wasn't given a lot of money per se. We tend to think of an inheritance as, just whatever money's in the bank gets split up, whatever. But in this case, he was given probably mostly material things, livestock, grain, equipment, probably also given a wagon and either horses or oxen to haul, his stash. Because what the father was actually doing, in dividing things between this young man and his older brother, uh, he he was giving him what he needed to be successful, to start his own business, in effect, right? I mean, what a picture of the grace of God. Here this kid is rebelling and insulting to the max, and yet the father says, all right, son, if that's what you want, here, I'm going to give you everything that you need to be successful. This is what I had to start with, and you see what I've been able to do, and so now here's your opportunity. Go ahead, you go try it your way, and let's see how it all works out. Right? So yeah, I mean, just another amazing example of the grace and the love of the Father for us is that he just gives us everything that we need to be successful, and we make the choice as to whether or not we include him on our journey. It's just that simple. We all have a journey, right, that we're on in life, and there's a destination in view, which is a destination of success and prosperity and all of that, right? But how we do the journey, I think, is really what's in view here. And so he gets all this stuff, right, and takes off, right? What is that telling us? What does that say? Well, we all have this tendency based on the old nature that we still kind of carry those ideas in our mind. We all have this idea that we just want to be self-sufficient. I don't want to need anybody, right? I got this. I'm good. I'm gonna get out there and do my thing, and I don't need anybody. I don't need you to know my business, right? Because I'm good. and we carry this delusion of self-sufficiency through, I think, a lot of our journey, because again, it's part and parcel with with the old nature that we inherited when we, as being born with that mindset. And so even after you get saved, you still have that, and you still struggle with that because we don't realize it's there, right? We go through life much of the time as Christians not realizing how much we're still being influenced by the old ways of thinking. And so we live as if we are orphaned. Oh my goodness, right? This idea that because of what we experience in life and how we are treated by people, especially a father or a father figure, right? We feel as if we've been abandoned and orphaned, and oh, God doesn't really care about me. Look at all the bad stuff that's happened to me. Where is God? Why didn't he do something? All these kinds of things that work to rob us of the truth and the kind of relationship with the Father that he absolutely designed us to have with him. This is what we struggle with. And so this ability that we have to choose oftentimes is informed by the lies and the deceptions of the enemy, but yet God gives us that choice. He never tries to force or manipulate us to go his way. He just simply says, okay, here you go. I love you. I want to be in your life, but if you choose not, then that's the road you're going to take. And he lets us do it, right? So we recognize, right, that he is always going to love us. He's always going to be there for us and with us, even if we're not recognizing it, even if we're not accepting that, right? As Jesus said, the Father, he causes his sun to shine on the good and the bad, the rain to fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. He's just the constant. He is the constant in all of life. And hopefully at some point, as this young man did, we wake up and realize, right? So, he takes all this stuff that he's been given and basically heads off, as Jesus puts it, to a distant country. So the journey that he's on takes him away from the the people and the sphere, that he's been born into, the environment in which he's lived. He chooses to walk away from all of that. And that's kind of remarkable, since we know that the father in this example is a good father, yet for whatever reason this son decides, well, I think I can do better on my own. And that, of course, is just that human pride, that arrogance that we have, thinking that, yeah, I can do this. I'm able to, chart my own path, be the captain of my own ship, all of those metaphors that we buy into, as humans, because that's one of the major issues that we all have, is this kind of prideful thing that makes us believe we can do it on our own. And the fascinating thing about that, of course, is that there's actually a positive application of that, which we can get into later. But he decides to step out of the place that God had in mind for him. God absolutely has the right place for every one of us, because he's a good father. He has the right connections, the right people, the right kind of environment for us to flourish in. But we've got to, choose that. We've got to look for it in many cases, because we've been so deceived by the enemy to think that, well, nobody cares about me. No one, wants to help me or be part of my journey. And so we just kind of have that mentality. And, God is saying, no, it's already there for you. Just as in this story, this son had a perfect, beautiful environment to live in, and he walked away from it, right? And so when that happens, we basically are walking away from God's provision. He's saying, look, it's all here for you. Just trust me. Let me show you what I've given you in this place where you are connected to me, connected to the people that I have for you, right? I say, no, I'm going on my own. We walk away. And so the result is that you end up, in these environments where it's diametrically opposed to the kingdom and what God has for us. And that, wow, it's like you wake up on some level and go, oh, wow, I had no idea this was so crazy out here. But it is. It can be very crazy, as we all know. And so the young man goes on this journey to a distant country, and he discovers that the people there, well, they're not like the people that are where he's from. Is whatever his reasoning is for leaving, it's he finds out pretty quick that where he ends up, these folks are way worse than where he came from, right? Because he's now in an environment where people are going to use and abuse and basically leave him to die of starvation. That's the environment, that's the culture that he ends up in. Why? Because he felt like, I can do this on my own. And listen, I think we all know what that feels like. We all know what that experience looks like for us to strike out, in some direction that's not where God wants us to be. And, wow, how is that working out for us? Well, not very well. So this is in effect what this guy is doing. So what's the takeaway? Well, the takeaway here, I think, is pretty clear that unless God is leading us to go somewhere, right, we have to recognize where He's placed us, where He's put us to have the right kind of connections, the right kind of environment, where we can actually grow and flourish. And honestly, there are times when we may be in certain environments that may seem like they're okay, but they end up not being okay because the people there may be, they may, I don't know, say the right things. You may belong to a particular kind of a church or other environment where people, they worship the Lord, they talk about good things, there's good teaching, but who you are and what you're called to doesn't get honored or respected or celebrated. And that's a challenge, because God absolutely has an environment where you can be honored and respected and celebrated so that you can flourish and become all that He's designed you to be, right? And so that's something we got to look at. If we're in these kind of environments where, we're not getting that kind of support, well, where is that? Where, Lord, show me. Show me where I can receive that kind of support and mentoring and help, so that I can become the full, mature son or daughter that you want me to be. See, that's the issue. So, this, what he did in trying to just go off on his own, figure, I'm going to find my own place. Well, that's wrong. But it could also be wrong to kind of settle for something that is less than what God has in mind. So we need to check with Him, right? We need to, Lord, I feel like I'm not going anywhere here. Why is that? And it's very likely that He'll show you that it's because where you are, they don't have what it takes to help you go further. Many times a ministry has a very specific purpose, in developing people, because that's all they know. That's all they've been given. That's the grace that they have. You look at some of the old line denominations out there, they steward a very important piece of God's revelation. I think about Martin Luther and his 95 Theses and the Lutheran Church that was birthed out of that, and how they have stewarded faithfully justification by faith. Now, there's a lot more revelation beyond that, but that's where they are. And so there can be many times in your life where you'll be in a ministry, in a situation where, okay, I've learned this, but I feel like there's more that I'm supposed to do. God, why am I not moving forward? Why do I feel stuck? And it's likely because the folks that you're, associated with, that's all they know. And you don't blame them for that. You don't get angry. It's just, okay, so where is the next place that I should connect to? Keeping in mind that the folks that you are leaving are likely not going to be happy with the fact that you're moving on. They're going to receive that as somehow it's an insult, or that you're, saying something bad about their ministry because you're not sticking around. Just be aware of that, okay? So, the other danger, of course, is that we become so jaded by the problems in whatever environment that we're in that we just choose to remain isolated. Well, I'm not gonna, I'm not connecting anywhere because it's nothing but problems. That's pretty much a choice where you determine where you're going to level off in your growth because you're just not connecting, right? We're not islands here. We are part of a body. We're part of this thing that God is doing, and we need to be connecting in ways that He shows us to. That's the key. Lord, where do you want me to connect? Who do you want me to connect with? Right? You can find long distance mentors through books and through teachings that are available online and different things like that. where God uses these folks to mentor you and teach you, take you beyond where you are. I mean, in many ways, that's what I'm trying to do through Breakfast with Jesus, right? Is to really provide something that folks may not get in their normal circles. Again, I'm not casting any aspersions on other ministries and what they do. Everyone is doing, I believe, what they believe God has called them to do. And that's all we all can do, right? Is just try to be obedient and follow God in our life with him. And so God definitely wants to train us up, to bring us what we need so that we can develop and grow and really engage in that. That's the thing, right? So his decision to leave that environment obviously didn't have good consequences. And so that's what we're seeing here, and that's what we need to understand for ourselves as well, that we can make these kinds of decisions that we think might be better, but if he doesn't direct us, right? If he's not opening a door and showing us, yeah, this is where you need to be for now so that you can receive more of what I have for you, right? Then it's just not going to work out well. So the distant country that he ends up in, right, is that place where we are basically just doing whatever we feel is right. There is a way that seems right to a man, as it says in Proverbs, but the end thereof is death. I mean, I shouldn't laugh because I'm laughing because I can only always remember the King James version of that. It's actually, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man. And it's true. That's the principle that, is in view here with this young man taking off, going where he thinks is going to be a better situation. And it ends up being the worst possible situation that he could have ever been in, right? So that's kind of the ultimate outcome of any choice that we make to live in a way that is separate from what the Father wants for us. Again, remember, we're talking about a Father who is nothing but good, always has all manner of good blessings for us as his children. The word talks about how every good thing given, every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. That's James 1:17. This is the Papa that we have, right? And yet, in our prideful delusion, it's like, oh, I think I can do this on my own. So, the pride, the old nature, remnants that are still there are leading us to go in these kind of directions. And, it reminds me of something that I had seen years and years ago where I forget who was doing this now, but they were kind of parodying the selfish nature that we struggle with. And it was this song and dance where they were doing this thing called I want what I want when I want it, and I want what I want right now. And I'm like, I've never forgotten that for some reason. And that's kind of, in essence, the problem that we face when we do this thing. And so what happens, right? Here's what happens on a spiritual level, and I'm going to leave you with this to kind of ponder for today. When we make the choice to walk away from where God's called us to be, we are actually choosing to live under a different government. Because the kingdom, right, is a government. It's a spiritual government that we've been born into, but from which we can choose to walk away. But when that happens, we are, whether we realize it or not, we are actually placing ourselves underneath the influence and direction of a different government. It's not the government of God, that's for darn sure. It's another government. And that kingdom, which we've been delivered from, we're actually going back into. And guess what? When the enemy sees that, he's so angry that we left his kingdom in the first place that if we go back into it, he's like, got you now, sucker. You are going to be, attacked every which way but loose. And that's what happens. It's almost like the devil doesn't realize that if he does that, he's going to wake us up. But he just takes his revenge, basically, when we choose to walk away from God's, blessing and his provision and his rulership in our life, and walk away into that new government, which is really the old government, right? And all that affects, how that affects us. And so we'll talk a bit more about that as we move forward tomorrow. So I know this was like one of those messages that he's like, oh gosh, do we have to talk about this? It's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but I think it's always good to remind ourselves of these truths, because we still do have tendencies along these lines to be independent, to be self-sufficient, to be isolationist in our approach to life. And it's in the story, so we've got to look at how it applies in our own lives. So yeah, not much fun, but it's the truth. So we'll leave it there. All right, let me say good morning to the rest of you amazing breakfast clubbers. Let's see who jumped in here with me this morning. Where'd I leave off? Let's see. Oh, there's Donna and Allison. And let's see, Cleofe, Callie, John, Marcos, Maria, Elisha, Linda. Good to see you guys. Candy, and who else? I'm scrolling. There's Susan. Hey, Ryan, how are you, bro? Let's see. Did it, done that? Yes. I think we can all say I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. In my case, I've got too many of those t-shirts. Thank you, guys. I appreciate so much having you along with me this morning. And thanks to those of you that are sharing this video. I tell you, I love seeing new folks come in, and it's all because of you. They're finding out about Breakfast with Jesus. Hey, send me a message if you'd like to talk, if you have questions, Facebook message or email. I'd love to hear from you. Have a wonderful day. Just rejoice, rejoice in this amazing Papa that we have, that we get to walk and know him and just enjoy this kingdom that he's put us in. It's a good thing. We'll see you tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much.